One of our favorite things to do, I say we, and I'm generalizing here, is try to figure out why God does the thing that He does. Anybody ever taken an afternoon to try to figure that out? Things just sometimes don't make sense, and you can't come up with a good reason why. It's kind of, out of all the people in the world, why did God pick me for this? Or why did He pick you for that? Or why? Nothing, you and I firmly believe nothing special about any of us, except God called us. And so today we're going to look at this guy named Joseph. And his beginning, just normal. We get no insight really at all as to why God would pick Joseph to be something. And we put an awful lot of emphasis on Joseph, don't we? I mean, if you look at the Old Testament, Joseph takes up more of the book of Genesis than anyone else. It's kind of a big deal. But is Joseph the biggest deal of his brothers? Joseph had one brother who was a bigger deal. Judah. What happened through Judah's family? Jesus Christ. Jesus was not from the line of Joseph. Jesus was from the line of Judah. And so when you look at this whole family dynamic, it is all messed up. This is like a Jerry Springer episode of family relationship. Dr. Phil would have a heyday sitting down with these brothers and trying to figure everything out. But not just that, I mean, it's like they took the social norms and just threw them out the window. Okay, you got Joseph, who's not the oldest, and he's not even the youngest. He is next to youngest, and yet he's the biggest deal, the immediate family. His descendants, how much portion are they going to get when they get to the promised land? They get twice as much. That's why when you think about the 12 tribes of Israel, you think, well, where's the tribe of Joseph? Joseph gets 2. I mean, it's kind of a big deal, but he's not the oldest. The oldest is the one who ought to get the lion's share, right? And you think, well, if it's not the oldest, then the next logical guess is the baby of the family, right? Anybody else the baby? I mean, there are perks to being the baby. So, but he's not even the baby. So anyway, let's jump in here and we'll read a little bit about Joseph, starting Genesis chapter 37. Now Jacob is also known as Israel. All right. So you talk about Joseph's lineage. Joseph is from the lineage of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, what kind of person was Jacob? Was Jacob the most upstanding person that you ever met? No. You keep both eyes on Jacob, because Jacob will rob you blind. If you don't believe me, you can ask Uncle Esau. And Uncle Esau would say, don't turn your back on my brother at all, because he will stick it to you. So you got Jacob. Jacob lived in the land where his father had sojourned, in the land of Canaan. These are the records of the generations of Jacob. Joseph, when 17 years of age, was pasturing the flock with his brothers, while he was still a youth, along with the sons of Bilhah, the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father. All right, so Zola raised her hand as being a baby as well. I feel certain that just like myself, there were probably times when Zola felt like it was important to inform her mom of things that the older ones were doing. I can remember when my sister would drive me home from school, that she would drive with one hand, and the other hand she would cover the speedometer. Because the topic at dinner at night was how fast my sister drove. I mean, I just worked that into the conversation. Hey, Mom, can I have some more mashed potatoes? By the way, Tracy was doing 70 miles an hour on the way home. Needless to say, I understand Joseph's plight in life. My sister didn't like me either. So he brings back a bad report about his brothers. I don't know that I didn't do it because I didn't like my sister. I did it because I felt like there was some sense of right and wrong, and I knew what my mom and dad expected. They expected her to drive the speed limit. They wanted her to be safe. And so I just wanted to say she wasn't doing it. And so there's probably I'm giving Joseph the benefit of the doubt. The rest of you guys are turning on me. Do not turn on me. Joseph probably didn't mean anything bad by it. Joseph's just like, you know what, that's not the way Dad would want the flocks taken care of. Or maybe they were supposed to be doing something and they weren't. Maybe they were all taking a nap, or they all went fishing, and just left everything by themselves. Don't know. But we do know that Joseph, while he was still a kid, came back home and gave his dad a bad report on his brothers. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than all of his sons because he was the son of his old age. And he made him a varicolored tunic. Now, Dolly Parton would not like what I'm about to say. But we're not entirely sure, based on the Hebrew word there, that we're actually talking about a multicolored garment. Most scholars today, it may have been multicolored, I don't know. But most of the scholars today would say that the word he's trying to use to describe this garment would have been a long garment. So that it's been like a trench coat, maybe, in our way of thinking, or had long arms. All right, so when you start, let's go back to another place in the Bible. You remember when God showed up to talk to Job? And God told Job to gird up your loins like a man. Remember what he was telling Job? Take your dress and tie it up around your waist, because we're about to get serious. So you can't go out to the fields working in your long flowy robe. So when you get out there to start working, you're tying stuff up, putting it around your waist so that nothing encumbers you, nothing gets in the way. Israel makes Joseph a coat that belongs to the boss. So when Joseph goes to the field with his brothers, guess who's not anticipating on doing manual labor? Joseph. Because his dad made him a coat that was to be worn by the person in charge. So now imagine how his brothers feel. Joseph's probably their favorite person in the world, isn't he? I mean, here's Joseph, and he's got all these brothers in front of him. So I don't know the timeline of when one brother was born and another and another and another, but I would have to guess there's more than 10 years difference between Joseph and the oldest brother. And Joseph is his boss. So they don't like him. And his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all of his brothers, and so they hated him and could not speak to him on friendly terms. So this is more than I'm slightly perturbed with you. They hated Joseph, would not speak to him. Well, Joseph has a dream. Now this is one of Joseph's things, isn't it? We're going to see in his whole life that Joseph has dreams. So Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. Now, I've heard people before talk about Joseph. And again, I like Joseph. I'm going to give Joseph the benefit of the doubt. I don't think Joseph shared his dream because he's trying to rub anything in. I don't think so. Anybody ever get excited about something and you just want to talk about it? And then later, your wife or your husband or a friend or somebody says, well, it really came across like you were bragging. And you're like, well, I wasn't bragging, I'm just excited. I just want to talk about it. That's what's going on in my life. Well, now we translate this to a society where dreams really mean something. Okay, so if I told you about a dream that I had, it'd be like, oh, I killed some dragon or something, I don't know. And you guys are, oh, that's interesting. We don't put any stock in dreams in Malvern, Arkansas. They mean nothing. But now you go to a society where dreams mean something. It's a big deal to have a dream. And so Joseph has this dream and he shares it with his brothers. He says, listen to the dream that I had. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf rose up and also stood erect. And behold, your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to my sheaf. Then his brother said to him, are you actually going to reign over us? Or are you really going to rule over us? So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Now he had another dream. This is a big deal as well. Notice you got to tie stuff together in the Bible. You remember when Joseph is talking to Pharaoh a few chapters from now, and Pharaoh had, how many dreams did Pharaoh have? He had 2 dreams. And remember what Joseph told Pharaoh, the reason why he had 2 dreams? He said, you had 2 dreams about this because God has made up his mind. It is settled. This is what's going to happen. So that's important. And we know now, looking back, it's important. Joseph had how many dreams? 2 dreams. So what does Joseph say that means? God's mind is made up. This is what's going to happen. So he has a second dream. And he says this, lo, I've had still another dream, and behold, the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. How many brothers does he have? He's got 11 brothers. He's got a mom and a dad. Now here's what's interesting about this. Where's his mom at this point? She's dead. So this dream is living and dead are bowing down. And he related it to his father, to his brothers. Now here's what is so interesting. His father got mad about it. Now who was his dad? Jacob. We've started calling him Israel here in verse 3, but he began in verse 1 of chapter 37, Moses did, by referring to him as Jacob. And Jacob is the deceiver. Jacob was the second born. Jacob cheated his brother Esau out of his inheritance so that he could be number 1 in the family. Jacob is used to having people bow down to him. And now he's got a son, Joseph, and Joseph said, I had a dream. And Jacob would have understood these things. Jacob was a God-fearer. Jacob would have understood that this dream was not coincidental. This dream was not by accident. Jacob also realizes we're talking about a life-changing event. Something is going to happen. Because he's not planning on bowing down that day to his son. He says, so he rebukes him and he says, are you telling me that I and your mother and your brothers actually come to bow ourselves down before you to the ground? And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind. He always remembered this because dreams meant something. This is our introduction to Joseph. Joseph is a guy who is unique from the very beginning. He is a guy that apparently has a good grasp on right and wrong. Because what would have been easy for him to do? You think, even just that little bitty verse, he came back and he gave his father a bad report about his brothers. And this is why I don't think he was just being a tattletale. Because when we go through the rest of Joseph's life, and I encourage you guys to read the rest of Genesis, just go ahead and start reading through it. And as you read the life of Joseph, what you're going to find is that Joseph always has a clear sense of right and wrong. Joseph is not willing to bend the rules for immediate gratification. Joseph is not willing to do something that is wrong because it is easier for him at the moment. Joseph's never going to be willing to do that. Joseph is always going to be wanting to do the right thing. And so we see from the very beginning that God has put Joseph in the family. I mean, his dad's Jacob. From our point of view, that's kind of a big deal. I mean, if you think about it, throughout the entire Old Testament, we find that people, when they refer to God, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I mean, your dad was Jacob. Your great-grandpa was Abraham. This is royalty from our point of view. So he's born into this family. He's given a position of authority even at the age of 17. His dad has made them this coat. You're going to be in charge. You're going to make sure that everything is done right. And then God begins to bless him with dreams. Guys, every one of us finds some time in our life where we're in the zone. And it feels like everything is clicking. Our life is going right. We got that job promotion we wanted. We're living our dream. God's using us. God's given us, he's given Joseph this dream. God's using us. God's got us in this place where everything is going right. And in those moments, it is simple for us to give thanks. Isn't it? It's easy to look around and say, the grass is not greener anywhere else than it is right here. This is superb. This is excellent. We get caught up in the moment. We say, God, thank you for this. Thank you for this. Thank you for this. Easy to give thanks. What we're going to start seeing with next week is that Joseph's life is going to do this pretty fast. He goes from the absolute top of the world to the world is sitting on top of him. And he's going to be betrayed by his own family. Because every one of us has those times in our life where it's easy to give thanks. And I guess the point that I want to make this morning as we just begin this by looking at these few verses about Joseph's beginning is that there are times in our life, like I said, where God has got us in a place and everything is coasting. We're driving down the interstate with cruise control on. I just want to encourage us to always be prepared for the bump in the road. Anybody ever drive down the road with cruise control on and you hit a puddle of water that maybe is deeper than you thought? Or you don't even have the cruise on. It is pouring down rain and you're driving down Main Street and you get a little too close to the curb, and so suddenly you're going from being on just concrete to being in water that deep. What happens to your vehicle? We've all been there. I just want to encourage you that that's how life is. That life is not always smooth. And if you're in that place right now where life is smooth, I just want to encourage you to hang on to the wheel. Because it's not going to stay that way. And you say, well, that's pretty pessimistic. No, because the other thing that we're going to see in the life of Joseph is that Joseph's life is going to go horrible quickly because God wanted it to. Wasn't chance. Wasn't bad luck. It was God's plan. God is going to allow Joseph's life to go awful so that at the end of the day, Joseph is exactly where God wants him to be so that he can be used. How are we going to give thanks in the bad times? By keeping our mind focused on the end of it. The end of this is God's plan. God has a plan for you and He's got a plan for me, and I don't understand it always. And sometimes our plans change, don't they? Anybody ever had a plan change? Sometimes our plans change. And what we have to say in that moment is, God, you know better than I do. I don't know where you're trying to take me, but it will be a wonderful destination once we get there. So, begin the process. I didn't want to start off Debbie Downer. So begin the process of thinking about all the wonderful things that have happened in your life. That's where we're going to start this journey of thankfulness. Don't think about the sad things. Don't think about the bad things. Don't think about things that went wrong and turned out okay later. I want you just this week to concentrate on all the wonderful things that have happened in your life. I'm going to give you a chance right now. It's kind of an impromptu, short testimony time. What are some things that have just been wonderful in your life that you're thankful for? Again, nothing that started off bad turned out great. I want just things that have started good and they're just good.
My 6 grandbabies.
Mark, just for a second I thought she was going to say you. And She did.
You said just the good times.
Yeah. Oh.
Only good times.
Oh. Someone else. Things that are great.
I spent a weekend with a very good friend of mine and met him miles and miles away. So that was good.
It really worked out well for Barney. Someone else. Some things that we're just thankful for.
Hanging out with my cousins and sisters.
There you go. Someone else.
Oh. Yesterday and yesterday, my sister wanted us to watch TV, so I gave her a choice by Lovecraft and George, and she picked Lovecraft.
Well, I would have picked George, but that's a good take. Someone else. It may just be a moment. Just a moment that is always great. I think one of the greatest moments, there's so many, because I remember stuff, so many great moments. You know, hearing Jared say, and we're just praying that God will lead somebody to adopt the baby. That's a pretty good moment. And then the greatest words I've ever heard was, she's here. I still cry about that. She's here. It's a great moment. Nothing will ever pour rain on that parade. Hearing Chris say, I can still remember we were on Bill Street and I just paid like $90 for one of those carriage rides. And so I thought, I've got everything set up perfect. I'm thinking I paid $90 for this carriage ride, and she knows how much I paid for it. And so we get off the carriage ride, and I said, I just want to tell you I love you. And I'm thinking, this is going to be it. She's going to say it. And she responded with, that is great. And I hope one day I can say the same thing. And then she did one day. That's a great thing. Someone else, what are things we're thankful for?
I've got a busload of kindergartners and fifth and sixth graders that argue, fuss, fight, and will stand their seat every day. So I had to get on them quite a bit. But Friday, we were coming down the hill at Kentucky Pride, and one of the little ones started singing "The Wheels on the Bus Go Round and Round." By the time we got to the top of the viaduct, the entire bus was singing that, going down the street, and all the politicians were over there looking like we was crazy. Then you just got the whole bus settled down, and they were just singing that the whole bus.
Those politicians were the crazy ones.
Just knowing that I have good friends that if something happens at school or something, that I know they'll take care of me.
There you go. What other things we're thankful for?
Mark is officially on the liver donor list as of Tuesday.
Mm-hmm. Someone else. Anything you're thankful for?
Being able to watch our parents get to see their great-grandchildren and the smiles that puts on their faces and being able to watch that's amazing.
I think as much as we badmouth our country, that every one of us ought to be thankful we were born in the United States.
Amen.
The greatest country in the world.
It's not perfect, but it is closer to perfect than anywhere else. There's nowhere else I'd want to move. And not other than, Jack's not here, so I can say it, and not another state I'd rather be a part of. I lived in Louisiana for 3 years, and I'm glad I came home. Anyone else?
I think the health it gives us may not be perfect, but when you look around and see others, eyes to see, ears to hear, legs to walk,
Yeah.
that take some of that away and
thankful for my kids and my grandkids and my brothers and sisters.
On Facebook, my sister started, I don't know, 6-7 days ago, about listing all the things that she's thankful for, all the people that she's thankful for, and she has yet to get to me. And so, Chris just looked on Facebook. Today was me. She was thankful for me. We'll see what she says. She probably made it up.
Well, I'm thankful for relationships. First of all, a relationship with Christ, but then with many people, just having those relationships is real good.
Yeah.
Like Mike said, thankful for where we live, things that we get to be a part of just by that. And Tuesday is one of the greatest probably gifts that each one of us have, that we take it so much for granted. We don't need to do that. You need to get out Tuesday and use your boat.
Both our journeys that we've been going to Bali and different places like that. I've become more aware, and I've got some sitting right here of the missionaries. God. And the jobs they do that we're not even aware of. And even a little bit that we've learned, going, it's just the tip of the iceberg of difficult.
Yeah. We all have wonderful things to be thankful for. And that's what I'm challenging you this week. Next week, I'm just go ahead and give you the upfront, honest truth. Next week's not going to be very good. But this week, I want you to concentrate on the wonderful things that God has allowed you to see, that He's allowed you to be a part of. This last week, I was looking at a screensaver on a computer of, I'm assuming it is a glacier field in Alaska. That is my assumption. And I was just sitting there thinking about that and how beautiful it was, and how God created that. And I just thought to myself, I said, God, I said, if you will just one day give me the opportunity to stand there and see it with my own eyes, not on a computer screen, I will be so thankful for that opportunity. So we'll see. But that's just God has done us some amazing things. It's deer season, right? Before you shoot that deer, just stop and think, wow, God, that is an amazing animal that you have created. And then eat him for supper. And he tastes so good. Guys, God's blessed us all beyond measure. And I can promise you right now that on your worst day, there are people that have it worse than you. I got a friend that I pastored her in Marvel when we were there, who has probably been 2 weeks ago now. Her dad, everything's fine, no real health issues, had an aneurysm burst in his brain and has been unconscious ever since, unresponsive. Not sure if he will wake up, and if he does wake up, what the medical impact will be on him. They've had to take the back of his skull off and remove they've even had to remove parts of his brain because of swelling. So, what do we have to gripe about? So, we're all still upright. All right, so let's pray and be thankful for God. One of the other